Hey, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a
It's
pleasure to be here with you.
it's so great to connect with you. So I was just saying to you that I like to go deep fast.
Mm.
So we'll start off with what would you say your gift is?
Oh, what a great question. Um, my gift is doing my own thing and navigating the ins and outs and challenges to actually doing that because it doesn't come naturally to me. Like any woman, I feel like I want to keep everybody happy and please everyone. And what I've come to really practice and what I've seen everything has lined up in my life to help teach me to do is to do my own thing.
You're so good at it too.
Oh, thank you.
You're such a great writer
Thanks.
and expressing yourself and sharing your vulnerability and really I see you, I want to say being you and really you have a great way of putting words to it. So just to reflect back to you some of
Right.
your
That
gifts.
means a lot to me.
And another question for you in terms of, I know you have a strong message about living more.
Mhm.
Why do you think so many people are waiting to live more? I mean, waiting for the money, waiting for the wait,
Mhm.
waiting for, the experience. There's so many reasons why we wait.
Yeah.
Why do you think we're so conditioned to wait?
Yeah. So, such a great question. I think that we have been sold a bunch of lies as women in this culture. And I think the number one lie that keeps us playing small is that we will be happy if we are thin. And that one lie keeps us stuck in a box of not moving forward in our lives. And I believe that it's a patriarchal tool to keep women conditioned to be quiet and to not stand up for what we believe in.
Mm.
It's not based in truth. Because there are a million other reasons to take care of our body, like having great energy, and that this is our home for our soul, and that if we are healthier, we are more powerful. But the fact that we've been sold this idea that the only way we will be powerful is if we shrink our bodies to a certain ideal that isn't actually attainable for most women, it keeps us from actually coming out as who we are.
Mm.
So I feel so passionate about it because like my work has really taken this like pretty cool trajectory where I really started in the emotional eating area and had this discovery in my own life because I was always overweight. I could never go on a diet. I always thought that my life would begin when I was thin. And one day I just realized actually this really disgusting thing happened. I ate an entire bag of Dove chocolate promises, those little squares. And I left 5 left in the bag and I threw it out. And then I went back 15 minutes later and fished it out of the trash.
How
I
old
was
were you?
also, I was 25
Okay.
and I was on a juice cleanse at the time also. So I realized in that moment, okay, I'm just not going to be able to diet. It's just not happening for me. I've been trying to diet since I was 10 years old. So I guess I'm just going to be fat forever. And so I might as well get on with my life. And then I realized when I stopped obsessing over everything I was eating and looking a certain way, because I just gave up, I realized that my life was so boring. And I did all these things to make my life better. And all of a sudden, I didn't need ice cream every night.
Mm.
And it was a real transformation for me. And then through that, I found spirituality and this whole world opened up to
How
me.
did you find it?
Um, I got an email from a friend of mine when I was at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to go to one of Gabrielle Bernstein's coaching programs, which at that point was in her apartment. And there was like 25 of us sitting around. And it all started, and I meditated my butt off. And that was amazing. And then from there, I learned more about the priestess initiation path and the divine feminine, and from there about earth-based spirituality and, the history of witches and all that stuff. And it's been just a great way for me to practice not waiting on things, at every turn.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that for myself, I struggled with food in my 20s, that, there was a time period where I was trying to like figure out how I could get thin. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a problem that needed to be solved. And I was trying to solve it from the outside.
Yep.
By, what do I eat or how much
Mm-hmm.
do I exercise versus solving it from the inside. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like that was a similar path for you.
Totally similar. And I think the thing that's so important for women to know is that we are so much more than our bodies. And to realize that we are so multifaceted, that we are so magical, that we have so much to give. And the shape of our bodies is just one piece of that, is really keeping us in a place of extreme pain, because we feel like we can't come out as who we are until we look a certain way. And I've recognized in my own life, it's actually the opposite. When I came out as who I am unapologetically, all of a sudden I wasn't so tired and exhausted and stressed from being someone I wasn't on a daily basis. And all that exhaustion and stress just caused me to eat more.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I could just be me, all of a sudden all these great things started happening. I felt happier, and the emotional eating really went away.
So it sounds like our attention can be so fixated on, how do we get thin so that we can achieve things versus putting your attention on how do I make my life great?
Right. Yeah. How do I make my life great? And how do I take that? This is where spirituality comes in. How do I take the time to really discover who I am?
So great.
And from there, okay, now that I know who I am, what does my life need to look like in order for this person I am discovering to be fully expressed in the world? And, I think a lot of women who are listening, that this is when work feels really in alignment. This is when we get up every day and we're super excited about what we're doing. I really think about my work. I really try to talk about it now that I'm focalizing a temple, and I'm doing spiritual work. I'm not running a business or running a company. And I think that shift, it has been really helpful for me. And that's what I need to be in alignment with who I am.
I love that shift.
Thanks.
I love that shift. I really think that my definition of purpose is being the fullest expression of yourself.
Yes.
And I love the idea of, taking out, I see so many women get intimidated by this idea of like business.
Yeah.
It can also kind of feel a little bit masculine. Like I have to start this business.
Oh yeah.
Rather than making it just like an extension of who you are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always say, like, people always ask me, should I start my own business? And I say, well, I know for me, I am happiest when I get to be myself all day, or as many hours in the day as I can. And for me, I can only do that if I'm getting paid for some of the time that I'm spending being myself. And just the way that our family life is set up and how we support our household, me, my husband and I. And so that means I have to get paid to be myself. Some people don't feel like they need to be fully expressed all day, that it would be a lot better for them to go to work and be who they are, even though they're not maybe doing work that is totally aligned, and that allows them to be fully expressed when they're outside of work. There's so many different ways to do it, but I love having my work being an extension of myself.
So I'm curious, how do you think you got to know yourself better? Because it seems like that was really a big turning point in you to actually live more, is really getting to know yourself. So what are some things that you did that helped you get to know yourself better?
Yeah. So the very first place to start for me, because it, as you know, comes in layers, is what did I want to do for fun? what was fun for me. So I think it's a lot easier to start there than to go into this like deep, who am I? Why am I here? It's really like go where the energy flows. So what is fun for you? For me, it was, I started taking voice lessons again. I started going to dance class. I was super creative. It's really great to think about, what did you love to do when you were little? If you love to cook, maybe you want to take some cooking classes. If you love to play house, maybe you want to redecorate your house. You know, maybe you want to learn how to read tarot cards or just go to the beach for the day. So like that was the first layer, was fun of me discovering who I am and what I like. And then the second layer for me was then recognizing, what am I actually doing in my life that feels like I'm faking it? Like, what am I doing that feels hard or stressful or like just icky, contracting? And so for me, what I realized I was doing in my work was I was being a performer. I did this one really great photo shoot where I borrowed my friend's convertible. Like, I don't drive a convertible, you know, but it's like, I wanted to appear like I was the woman who was driving a convertible. And you know, it's like, sometimes we'll rent these big kitchens and like, you know, do this whole thing. It's we're putting on a show. We're trying to be someone we're not. And so when I realized, oh, I'm performing in these different areas of my life, or I'm people pleasing in these different areas of my life, what would it look like to not do that? And then all the stuff comes up, you know, all of the lies around, they will reject me, or that's not okay, or I will be alone, or I will never make money again. That was my whole thing. If I stop performing, I'm never going to make money. And then I'll be homeless on the street. You know, you go down that whole rabbit hole. So, but I realized that not being myself was a lot more painful than being broke.
Mm-hmm.
And not being myself was a lot more painful than maybe breaking up in my relationship or having friction with my parents or with my friends. That not being myself and not being true to who I was the most painful thing I could possibly think about. And I also realized it wasn't going to happen later. It wasn't going to happen in 10 years or when I lose 10 pounds or when I move or when my business is a little bit better. It was never going to happen. It's a habit. And I knew that I needed to choose in that moment. And then the practice just continues to continue to notice when we're doing something for somebody else instead of doing it for us, and to just be ruthless about that.
Did you find that you were surprised? Like, I find that sometimes I think that, you know, I've had the experience of like, you know, doing something that was vulnerable and feeling afraid that somebody was going to reject me, and then they end up liking it.
Yeah.
And I was wrong, you know, like I had this whole fabricated idea of like what was going to happen when I came out as myself, and then, you know, nothing really happened.
Yes.
But I've also had the experience of where I have lost some friendships along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had the experience where you're like scared to come out and then everything's fine?
Yeah, this is a great story. So before I had my son, Marshall, who's now 4.5, I would do this thing where I would have my spiritual friends and my normal friends.
Okay.
And my normal friends did not know that I talked to the Great Mother. My normal friends did not know that I pulled tarot cards every day. They didn't know that I meditated. I was just a normal girl next door who loved to drink rosé and read People magazine, you know, whatever. And then I was myself with my spiritual friends, but part of me always felt like a little bit more normal than them. You know what I mean? So anyways, when I had my son, I just decided I can't be two people anymore. I'm just so tired. And I knew that I wasn't, and I also couldn't have so many friends anymore. I didn't have enough time. So I knew that any new friend that I made, whether they were normal or spiritual, I had to be myself and I had to be real with everyone who I was with. So I met this amazing group of women who all had kids around the same age as my son. And I just was, when they would ask me my opinion, I would be like, well, this is what's happening in astrology right now. or let's pull out some tarot cards and like see what the cards say. And you would for sure put them in the normal category. And so one day after a couple months, they said, "Hey, Sarah, can you host a hippie night for us?" And I'm like, sure. What's a hippie night? I just wanted to like see, like, well, yeah, we can like pull cards and, you know, maybe do like henna, and they list some other things. I'm like, yeah, that would be great. So I ended up pulling cards for all of them, and we went so deep. And from then on, it was just, we were in it. And they are my lifelong strongest sister friends. And a lot of them now check out the astrology every week. And some of them were already into this stuff, but I could just tell as a group, we just started to lean on it more. And they did the most amazing ritual for me when I left San Francisco. Like, I just sobbed for 4 hours. It was so beautiful. And we started doing, you know, blessing ways when we all had our babies, because now all of us have had 2 or 3 kids. And it was just a great example. I feel like I sparked something, because I believe that we all have this inside of us. We're just scared to let it out.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think so too. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like this, like, I don't want to say spiritual shame, but I've felt like, you know, a little bit funny or scared to like
Yeah.
come out as a spiritual woman, like
Yeah.
full blown, and like, you know, and why do you think that is?
I think it's because of the patriarchy, to be honest
Okay.
with you, you know, and I think we have a collective, at least like in my lineage, everyone's lineage is different, but like my lineage comes from, you know, Celtic British Isles, where my ancestors were burned for being spiritual. And I mean, like the numbers that are coming out about the burning times in Europe are staggering. Millions and millions of women. And I think that left a deep scar on our souls. And our culture really has formed around women not connecting with their power. And, you know, for a while it came in, you know, not having women's rights and the burning times and racism and slavery and all of these terrible things. And one thing that is still happening right now is this thing around our weight. And of course, you know, racism is still rampant and all of these things. It keeps us from accessing the magical part of ourselves. And it's just like this big hand that keeps us squashed down. But I've seen, as we all have in the world, women are rising up in a really beautiful way. And we're really seeing it in the spirituality space. Because I think being spiritual gives us the power to speak out. It gives us permission to be who we are, and it lights our fire. And that's why I think it's so important,
So,
especially right now.
Sarah, how do you think being a mother changed you?
Oh, it changed me so much. I just couldn't pretend anymore. That was a big thing. Also, motherhood has been so hard for me, so deeply hard and challenging. And the biggest thing for me was I realized that I had what I think a lot of women have, which is this belief system that if I just have a cute husband and a house and a couple kids, then I should be happy. And I thought that when I had babies that I would want to retire and be a full-time mom. And I didn't. And I felt so guilty about that, because I thought that I should want to spend every waking moment with my children. And it was another level of me really understanding who I am, how I am different from my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother and all of my friends and women that I admire. And it has also really forced me to really be critical about how I spend my time and who I spend my time with.
How did it affect your business?
It affected it a lot. You know, I tried to have business as usual after I had my son, and it was really hard for me. I really was like, okay, I am pre-kid Sarah from 9 to 5, and then I am mom from, you know, 6 to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then after 5 at night when I put my son to sleep. And that flip-flop of like corporate Sarah and mother Sarah was so exhausting to go through every day. I wasn't integrated. And then with Annabelle, because my first two kids are 18 months apart. So then what I tried to do is I tried to hire a ton of people to replace my energy that I was giving. And then my overhead got so high that I was so stressed out. And so now and then I had to fire everybody, and that was a really hard day, but super liberating. And I really had to look at how I did business. I had to bring my overhead way down so the pressure was a lot less. And I had to really integrate who I was. And I had to say goodbye to that 27-year-old who just used to hustle her face off. I can't do that anymore because I have to pick up my kids at 4:00 and be present for them. And that was a really hard shift to say goodbye to that woman, for sure.
So I want to get back to a little bit of this idea that we're kind of, I mean, my idea of being a mother is so different from the actuality of it.
Yeah.
And we kind of glorify it in many ways. And I don't know if you grew up like this, but, I did have that idea, like, you kind of shared that you did too. But, when I get the husband and have the child and, then, it's like a stamp of like completion. Like I made it. And I actually felt like the opposite. Like I felt worse almost.
Yes.
Like I felt like this is so hard and I don't know how to manage it all. And I'm so unprepared, but like, it was like this, almost like I had reached the top of the mountain, but it was just like this it felt like a big fall for me.
Yes. I felt the same exact way. And this is why I created my program Whole Woman, which is a monthly membership. It's actually a moonly membership, because I did the same exact thing. I got to what I thought was the peak of the mountain, and I was like, here I am. And no one was there. And I'm like, I don't like it here. I am so miserable and unhappy, and I don't know what I'm doing and what's wrong. And this is another lie that the patriarchy has sold women, that you should be happy with kids and a house and a husband. Not only is that not true, but you can also obviously be happy without kids, a house, and a husband. Hello. And I always say, this is a quick aside, and I'm going to get back to your question. I get a lot of questions in Whole Woman. I don't want to have kids and I feel really bad about it. And what I always say to them is, choosing to not have kids is what choosing to go to work was 60 years ago. No one was doing it, but there was a few people that were at the leading edge. I think in 50 or 60 years, it's just going to be really normal for women to not choose to have kids. So all those women you guys are leaders and revolutionaries, and I applaud you. So, okay, I just want to say that. Coming back. Because what happens is, if we've been sold this lie and we believe it, we get to this fake peak and we panic and we think that something's wrong with us and we think we're guilty. And we just try really hard to make life work within this box. And we never actually get the chance to discover who we are, because we've been told that lie that we have already reached the finish line and there's nothing else left. So do you see how that just keeps us playing so small? It's terrible that we've been taught this. And it's so, it just creeps into our system. We don't even notice, right?
Yeah.
And so what I created Whole Woman to do is to really help women see that this is not the end of the road. This is not the be all end all. And we can honor it, and that can be okay. But where are you in this equation? We've been taught that our biggest accomplishments are like the children we have and the husband we have and the house we have, not who we are and what we are doing and what we possess within ourselves. And that's what's so important for all of us to start to discover.
Yeah. I love the title, Whole Woman.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I came to it in a meditation one time because I thought that when I was a mom, that I was no longer sensual, that I was no longer a good businesswoman, that I was no longer fun, And I wanted to feel whole. I wanted to be a mom and like a freak in the bedroom. I wanted to be a mom and make a lot of money and be a leader and be spiritual, and it's hard to feel like a priestess when I'm making hot dogs for my kids because I'm just so stressed out about everything. But we are whole, we are all things, and we need to start reclaiming all parts of ourselves, regardless of what phase of life we're in.
So let's talk a little bit about the home.
Yeah.
Because I read a really cool story, and we touched on it before we were chatting about how you manifested this home and the process of it and what it took to get there. So can you share a little bit about the home that you live in now?
Yeah, I would love to. So this was all happening, I think it was probably 2 years ago, that I was really in this place of losing myself, of not knowing who I was after I had kids. And I didn't want to be a hustler, corporate woman. I didn't want to be a full-time mom. I didn't know what else there was for me. And I couldn't see a future anymore for myself. And I couldn't get excited about anything. So I worked with this woman, Katina Mercadante, and she's an empowerer. And we did this really beautiful exercise where I told her my life story, and we uncovered what she calls my true core virtue. And then I wrote my 5-year plan in incredible detail. And it was because she gave me the permission to reconnect with who I was. So I wrote out this whole plan about getting women together in person in New England to help wake up the divine feminine in New England, because I was living in San Francisco where it was alive and well. And I felt like it was not there. Plenty of women are doing this here in New England, but I just wanted to join the forces. I felt like there was more help to be done. So I wrote this vision about women circling in big fields and dancing naked in the woods under the full moon. And I wanted to have enough land to build a yurt, and I wanted to have a stream running through my property. And I had always imagined this long, windy driveway with trees, and I wanted to have sheep and all this stuff. So when I wrote this, 2 weeks later, I go on Trulia because my husband and I are looking for a house. We thought we would buy some small farmhouse outside of Boston. I look on Trulia and I see this sort of funky looking 70s house on a lake. And I'm clicking on the pictures, and it's long, windy driveway with trees, sheep, and big open fields, 10 acres of woods, a lake. And I'm getting total out of body chills. And then there's a yurt already on the property, but it's not like a yurt. It's a full blown building, with plumbing and a bedroom and a kitchen and all this stuff. It's way better than any yurt I ever would have built for myself. I think it's the only yurt outside of Boston. I could be wrong, but it just felt so weird and out of place. So I'm freaking out. It's way over our budget. I go to sleep, and I wake up the next morning, and I just hear, I'm like, what do I do? Please tell me what to do. And I hear, Google it. I'm like, okay, that's super weird. So I'm reading the description. It says Harmony Farm. So I Google Harmony Farm, Massachusetts. And I'm reading this woman's blog about all the amazing things she does in her studio space, which she called Harmony Center. And I'm losing my mind because we're so in alignment. And then I realize she's my high school therapist, and she was the first person to help me with my body image issues. And I came to therapy in that house, but I just didn't recognize it. I was like an angsty 16-year-old. But she really set me on the right path. And she wrote a book about how the divine feminine is what is going to help people in their psychological journey. And it's just wild. So I sent her an email, and I came to look at the house. Again, we could not afford it. Came to look at the house, and we just both started crying. Turns out 2 weeks before that, she sent out smoke signals to call in the owner. And it had been on the market for a year and a half, almost 2 years.
This is a wild story, Sarah. Wild.
So anyways, one thing led to another. Everyone told me to not buy the house. I had to really tune out everyone who was telling me that it was a bad idea.
Like who?
Like my parents, like my grandparents, some of my friends. Because they were like, this is not safe. All their safety alarms were going off, which is true. It was not the reasonable thing to do. Having a super high mortgage, moving to a new place. Jonathan had his first job as a physician. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't even know if we were going to like the town. So, but I had to just really, really practice everything that I had been working on and come into my own heart and my own soul and ask, is this my house? And then ask for support from the divine. And so what happened is because we knew the owners, we were able to do a 2-part buyout process. So we bought one part when we purchased the house, and we're doing the second in like 3 years. And that never would have happened if it wasn't my therapist who was living here,
Wow.
Crazy. And so I show up and I'm like, no one's going to come to my full moon circles. Like, I'm in the middle of like Prepville, USA. Not true. I did one full moon circle. I barely promoted it, standing room only. We had 80 women show up, driving them all over the place. And it's been packed ever since. Like, people, like, this is a misconception that is so important for women to know. We hide because we think we're going to get rejected, but everyone else is hiding too. So if you come out as who you are with your friends, in your work, in your family, people will look at you and say, oh, I recognize myself in her. And so I'm going to come out too. And so and we can do it in little ways. Like, I always make a point, like when I go to the grocery store, like, I'm wearing my big feather earrings, so the women can find me. It's like wearing a sign that says, I'm spiritual too. And it's really important for us to do that so that we all start feeling safe to come out.
I love that story on so many levels.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I love even just the vision process of it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a big vision person. I love that. And how specific you are. Like, you
got to be so specific.
Yeah. So and specific. How long was this written out vision?
How many pages?
Yeah.
Like 15, like 10 to 15 pages.
Wow.
Because I also got into the kind of work I wanted to do and how I wanted to feel as a mother in this space and the kind of foods I wanted to cook. Like, I was so detailed. And what was interesting is that this is a piece that we actually talked about before we started recording, but the house is not a farmhouse that I thought I wanted. It's a 1979 contemporary sort of like funny looking situation. But I walked into the living room and I remembered that I had a vision of that living room when I was at Tony Robbins, like 7 years before I saw the house. And I remember having the vision and thinking, that's weird. I'm going to live in a farmhouse someday, but this house is modern. Brain, you're like being so funny with me right now. But and I do a lot of vision work in Whole Woman because sometimes we have to, what's great about vision work, not just with writing, but when we actually go into a deep meditation and we're guided towards a visualization and we're letting the divine and magic come in and help us, we bypass all of the rules that we have and the way our brain will say, oh, this is what I'm supposed to want. And so it was a real combination of like doing the writing, but I had to go through the process of bypassing what I thought I was supposed to want and what other people wanted for me. Yeah. And that's the first step to get behind. And that's what I think using spirituality to help you with, it's so powerful and effective.
Being able to recognize those, because there was blocks, right? Like, I don't have the money.
Yep.
Right. My parents don't approve. Mm-hmm. Right. And you kind of have to get through those. Like, once you have the vision, it's not just like, boom, you kind of have to get through those inner obstacles.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe, like, I would go back and forth every week. I'd call my friends. It's a great house, but I don't think it's my house. And my friends would have to be like, Sarah, no, this is your house. So that's another thing, to have a group of women who aren't about safety, who are about the magic, who are about you succeeding, who trust you to take a huge risk and succeed. You got to have those women in your court. And because if I had all my friends saying like, yeah, you're right, it's a lot of money, I wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. But I had this group of believers and magic makers, and they just said, you have to do it. And so that's one of the reasons why I created Whole Woman, because I wanted to get all those women in one place so that I could come to the community, or a woman could come to the community and say, I'm about to do this crazy thing. my parents say it's a bad idea, so do all my other friends. What do you guys think? They're like, yeah, go for it. This is so in alignment with your truth. We believe in you. That's what we need right now, you know?
Yeah. So I want to get into the body a little bit
Yeah.
in terms of the sensation of that magic, because
Mhm.
I think that doubt is an obstacle to be expected.
Totally.
And we have to overcome that, or not overcome it, but welcome it, work with it,
Yeah.
right? Recognize it.
Mhm.
What's the sensation of magic? Like,
Mm.
what does it feel like for you?
So I think everyone has a different sensation of magic, because all of our bodies are different. And our bodies are our temples. Our bodies are our honing device. So I always like to say the magic is the music, and our bodies are the radio or the iPhone that plays the music, right? So for me, I get chills on the top of my head and then they run down my neck. If it's really big magic, my whole arms just start buzzing and lighting on fire. And it's wild.
So, what if somebody is like, Sarah, I haven't felt magic?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's okay, and it's to the if you haven't felt magic, the first step to do is create space. Because if we're constantly running around doing errands, doing things for other people on our phone, in the to-dos of life, we can't experience magic. I really believe that magic only happens when we have space. So whether that's having a morning ritual of even 15 minutes, even 10 minutes, where you sit and you do nothing. Maybe you sit at an altar that you make and do nothing. Or a little bit more extreme is going on a retreat for 2 days by yourself. I experience the most magic when I when I like clear a day, or I get out of my surroundings and I go to a spiritual space.
Switching gears
Yeah.
totally here.
Yeah.
How'd you meet Jonathan, your husband?
Oh, what a great question. We met in college in history class. And
Okay.
typical college relationship, like we were just drunk at parties and fell in love with each other. And it's so funny because we were so different than we are now when we were in college. I mean, I was in full blown people pleaser mode. Um, I was like I hosted all the parties, and he was a football player, and we are both now very spiritual, deep people. And I'm just so glad that our 21-year-old selves knew. It was like I remember having this experience, like, I know this guy is my person, but I have no idea why. Because I was always dating the like emo guitar players, that were a little bit more alternative. And here's Jonathan. He's like this all-American football player who's going to be a doctor. And I'm like, this is so boring, but he's the most not boring person on the planet. So
What do you think? What do you think is the glue in your relationship?
We really let each other do our own thing. We're super independent. I do not feel like I need to be a certain way for him. And I do not need his permission to do anything. And I think for him, he feels my ultimate support, because being a doctor is a whole thing. This is his first job. He's been actually working for a year after 11 years of training.
Gosh.
And that's not including college. So we had a year of college together and then 11 years of training, and he's just now working, and we have 3 kids, and, we've had a whole life together. So, and the other thing too, is that we really hold each other to pretty high standards of being self-actualized. That's really important, to both of us, that we're not just going through the motions, that we are showing up as who we are in the most powerful version of ourselves.
And what do you think has been, or let me ask you this instead. What is something that people would be surprised to know about you?
Oh. It's so hard because I talk about so many things on the internet.
You really do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the thing that people would be surprised to hear about me is that I'm still pretty addicted to working. I think what I was talking about earlier about needing to say goodbye to that 25-year-old hustler is still in process. Like she comes out a lot, and really needing to discover who I am now as a leader of the work that I do is hard for me, because I do this thing where I want to accomplish a week's worth of work on Monday morning. And when I don't, I'm really hard on myself.
Mm.
And that's something that I'm learning how to, spread out and be more conscious about, and to not get so caught up in the marketing of things and all the rules of online marketing. And instead to really have everything come from a place of what I believe. But it's an addiction, and I'm
Yeah.
needing to treat it like that.
Yeah. It's also like a sorting through process of like
Mm-hmm.
sorting through what are the rules versus what I really believe. And that
Yeah.
comes in business and with food, with relationships, with family. It's such a sorting process of
It
like,
really
what do
is.
I really believe?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned a couple of times, like the evolvement, the actualization, it's a constant revisit.
It really is.
What's your spiritual practice like today?
Well, today, what I've been doing is I've been doing this for a couple of weeks now where we have a nanny that comes to the house that helps me take care of my 3-month-old baby. And then I bring my older 2 kids to school, which is next door. That was another magical thing that happened. Like we have a full-time daycare next door. I bring them next door, and then I go to the Moon Lodge, which is my separate round building space. And I move my body for 20 minutes, and then I sit and I talk to the land for 10 to 15 minutes. And that's because right now I'm in the process of really wanting to be in real life, like be here on my land and not on my computer all the time, not on my phone all the time, because I believe that all land is sacred. And the land I have here has been really taken care of as sacred land by the previous owner, and I want to connect with it. So that's what I've been really working on. And just looking outside, be like, okay, what is the weather telling me to do today? What is the season telling me to do? What is the moon telling me to do? And to recognize my connection with what's happening in nature. And I find that that gives me permission to be different every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what women really need. We need permission to be all different parts, to be different every day, to not feel like we have to be the same way we were a year ago or a month ago. And to recognize that it's okay to be different from our friends and
Yeah.
our mothers,
Do you think your friends are surprised by what you do?
No, I think now it's so funny because I had to choose, like, I'm just now the weird one. I used to be like the normal one. And
Uh-huh.
I am now, I've just owned, I'm going to be the person, if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what phase the moon is in, because I think it's important. And,
Yeah. So I want to just touch on this weird thing for a moment because
yeah,
I sometimes feel weird too. Like
yeah,
I'm the weird one, but
I'm the
why
weirdo.
is it weird?
Yeah,
Right? Like what is that stigma that it's weird?
right. I
Because it
think
is important.
it's just early. I don't
Okay.
think it's going to be weird.
Okay.
I think give us 5 to 10 years and it's not going to be weird anymore. It's going to be like going to yoga. I
Mm-hmm.
think when yoga was starting out, people who were going to yoga were really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And now, in 10 years, people who talk about the moon and live their lives by the moon, it's just going to be like going to yoga. It's not
Yeah.
a real thing. I also think a lot of it comes from witchcraft and the whole stigma and bad branding around being a witch, because technically a witch is just someone who lives in alignment with the earth and the cycles and the moon. And because that word has gotten such bad press over the past couple hundred years,
Like an angry witch.
yeah, or evil,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a stigma on purpose to keep our power down. It all comes back to women being smushed. And we're just slowly coming out and we're redefining what that is, and just starting to see it as normal, that we are connected to the earth. We live here. Of course we're connected. Our bodies have the same percentage of water as the earth has. That's weird, right? And that's why the moon affects us so much. It's because, we all know the moon affects the tides, but we have water in our bodies too. And so the moon's going to affect us.
Amazing.
So it's really just biology,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's profound when you really think about it in terms
It
of.
really is. And our hormonal cycle directly mimics the energy of the moon. And it's the same length, 29 and a half days. Crazy.
Yeah.
We can't argue that what's happening in the sky and on the earth isn't connected when what's happening in our bodies is the same exact thing,
What's your vision for women?
Oh my gosh, my vision for women is to only think about who they are and to act from that place and to not have it be a question, not feel the pressure to be someone that they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Tell us how we can get in. Oh, actually, let me ask you this first. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh my God. The best advice I've ever been given. This really should be something that's on the tip of my tongue. Let me think about it. I think it's my spiritual teacher, Kalila Elaine Dowdy, who is one of the focalizers of the Priestess Presence Temple and the 13 Moon Mystery School, that I've been a trainee of for the past 7 years. Can't believe it's been that long. She's the one who really told me, she said, Sarah, you're not the princess. You're the witch in the woods. And you need to get comfortable with that. And I was like, oh my God, I've been trying to be the princess in the tower my whole life. We all are. But I'm the witch in the woods. And that really has been a huge turning point for me in the way I see myself, in the way I do my work, in the way I parent. And it took so much pressure off.
How so?
Just like took pressure off my body, took pressure off the way I hold myself, it took pressure off the way I talk, the way I run my business, trying to be a princess all the time, that's hard work. Because it just wasn't true for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what does being a witch in the woods mean to you?
Just to be, everything is about magic, and magic can just be about making sure I'm putting love into the food I'm making for my kids, or when I'm straightening up the pillows on my couch, understanding how the energy shifts in my living room. It doesn't have to be about making potions and doing rituals, which I do, but it comes into just the tiny little everyday things. And when I see that everything I do has an element of magic to it, I just feel happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I know that I've heard Tony Robbins say, look for those moments of magic.
Yeah.
So the moments of magic.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Whole Woman and how to join your community?
Yes, absolutely. So Whole Woman, which you can go to wholewoman.me, is a moonly membership. So we start a new lesson on every new moon, which is the beginning of a moon cycle, and has the natural energy of starting something and creativity, and it gives us a little boost. And it's a place where we learn about the cycles of the moon, we learn about the seasons, and we use that as a tool to give us permission to be a mother and sensual and a priestess and doing the everyday human work of living, and that we can be all things. It gives us permission to be different every day. It gives us permission to grow. And so it's a place to just come back to remembering who we are, but also a place of education. And I always marry the education of earth-based spirituality with how to create a life that is a full expression of who you are. So not only are we discovering who you are, but we're talking about, okay, so what does that mean your day looks like now? Do you have to not show up to every PTA meeting anymore? Does that mean that you have to quit your job? Does that mean that you need to have an honest conversation with your partner about how he treats you or how he talks to you about your work? We really get into the nitty-gritty of creating a life that is a true reflection of who we are, because there's so many challenges around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And we can always use support and community to help us
Yeah.
create the life that we really want.
Yeah. And it's a fun group. The
Yeah,
women are awesome.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna, so much. This was such a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you. I'm so grateful too.